Good Shabbos, everyone. This week's Torah reading portrays the priest as physician, and it portrays spiritual blight as a medical malady. We focus this week on scaly skins and malignant discolorations. But simmering beneath the surface is a mode of power that challenges the modern mindset. It is the priest who holds the knowledge and authority to diagnose, isolate, and adjudicate regarding leprous eruptions and other maladies. The fate of those afflicted rests solely on the proclamations of the priests, who deem whether the people are labeled clean or unclean. In fact, in our parsha we read, regarding the person with a leprous affliction, the clothes shall be rent, the head shall be left bare, and the upper lip shall be covered over. And that person shall call out, impure, impure. If Tazria's depictions of disease don't inspire queasy feelings, the underlying social stratification may do so instead. Post-Temple Judaism and the rise of rabbinic reimaginations of Jewish life largely upend priestly potency. Divine communication in the rabbi system would no longer require the intermediaries of the priest or the altar. Divine communication, or the offering of flesh and blood, would morph into the offering of word and heart. And a collective of 10 individuals, a minyan, would become the new temple in any place and at any time. All threads and strands of modern Judaism reflect the dynamic disruptions of our early sages, positing new understandings of power and our human relationships to one another and to God. In a slightly more modern frontier, we see the ripples of similar disruptions all over the place. For example, we can find it in the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, NASA. For decades, NASA stood at the forefront of science and technology, pushing the frontiers of exploration and human possibility. By 2010, however, NASA faced staggering budget cuts and widespread questioning of its effectiveness and viability. So confronted with existential urgency and diminished resources, some of NASA's leadership reimagined their approach to innovation. Dr. Jeffrey Davis of NASA's Space Life Sciences Directorate picked out 14 strategic research and development challenges and placed them in an open forum for the world to help address. And the results? Staggering. More than 3,000 people in over 80 countries contributed. Typical R&D, research and development cycles, shifted from 3 to 5 years to 3 to 6 months. And people without degrees or academic pedigree offered solutions and concepts that eclipsed much of the best thinking at the Johnson Space Center. So successful was this new platform of open innovation that it is now built into both the structure and culture of NASA. More minds from more cultures and backgrounds, radical transparency, collaborative dynamics, and passion-driven work offer a markedly different path from the institutionalized, expertise-driven, confidential, and specialized approach of NASA's past. Such disruptive approaches to innovation and power may be seen in a multiple of sectors today, from Airbnb to Uber to Wikipedia. Hierarchies have been replaced with collaboratives, silos with creativity, and alliances with coalitions. Such approaches of new power are not without issue and controversy. Access to WebMD does not a doctor make. A Pew study shows that nearly 70% of Americans get their news on social media, dramatically altering the access of information and our encounter with dissonant understandings. Moving power from an anointed elite to a democratized collective may trade one set of pitfalls for another, but this pendulum swing is seen perpetually across recorded history. Moments when power rests in a wider pool of people tend to be linked to the greatest explosions of scientific thought and artistic expression as a fuller range of humanity encounters one another. Returning to our portion, Tazria, we witness the afflicted person, physically isolated and humiliated, crying out their tainted status in a world that has left all power in the hands of those above and far apart from them. Set apart from the camp physically, the afflicted persons await a priest to deem them worthy and allow them to return back to their community from the imposed isolation. Yet, our Talmudic sages offer a very, very different reading of the biblical episode. Rabbi Yochanan exhorted a woman afflicted, "Announce your trouble to your friends so that they may offer our prayers for compassion to be given you. For it was taught," quoting our same verse, "and shall cry, unclean, unclean." Thus, one must announce their trouble to the public so that they may pray for compassion to be dispensed to that person. And Rabbi Joseph stated, such an incident occurred at Pumbedita, and the woman was cured. In this radical rereading of our Torah text, a person afflicted and challenged is not driven outside of the community and told to be isolated until we think they're worthy to return, or until a priest decides that. Rather, the person is challenged and urged to place their troubles out in the open for the world to see and witness. And in such an act of vulnerability and courage, a world is moved to compassion and a collective moves towards mercy. Rabbi Yochanan moves away from consolidated priestly power and instead moves to a collective grassroots power to attempt to cure them from their collaborative compassion and prayer. And there is something curative when you know that people are rallying on your behalf. This paradigm, seen in the way the rabbis dealt with the text in Tazria, is also how they dealt with the text in creating the Passover Seder, which we formally begin thinking about on this Rosh Chodesh Nisan, which is also Shabbat HaChodesh. For after all, the biblical text emphasizes Moses and Moses' role only in the Exodus. But at the Seder, Moses' name is not mentioned in a traditional booklet at all, not even once. It is the people who rise up and receive healing and redemption because they dared to be publicly vulnerable with their pain. A groundswell of support from a mixed multitude took notice and joined with our Israelite ancestors in fomenting rebellion and in gaining their liberation. So the Haggadah. In these new understandings of Tazria and the Exodus, heroics are not placed upon the shoulders of an established elite, but rather in the grassroots potency of the people. When transparency of trouble enables a collective to act, we see a new power emerge, one where disease and plight are dealt with not through isolation and solitude,